From stressful inconveniences to full-on emergencies, life can be pretty tough to navigate, whether you're single, partnered, childless, or a parent. When significant challenges arise, it's easy to get stuck in doubt and anxiety. But what if you had the tools to handle and survive whatever came your way? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have safety without fear, readiness without rigidity, and security without paranoia? Today, I'm joined by a top-notch journalist, sixth degree black belt martial artist, former bodyguard, security consultant, and father of two, who will walk us through the top 10 steps you can take to keep you and your family as safe as possible. No matter what life throws at you, this episode will give you pointers to ward off harm, handle emergencies, and keep tragedies at bay. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. I suffer from chronic anxiety. Things that most people glide through make me freeze. I live in California, and I'm always worried about the next earthquake or fire. I get stuck even thinking about packing a go bag for me and my 3 kids. My partner can help, but if he was gone, I don't know what I'd do. And if someone broke into our house, I think I'd just collapse. I've tried therapy and it didn't help. My partner suggested that we move somewhere else, but natural disasters and problems are everywhere. Can you help? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love. Please note, as this episode may contain sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you need support, please see the special links in the show notes.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are imperfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, I am joined by a tremendous special guest, Jason Wayne Brick, who is a security expert, journalist, author, martial artist, former bodyguard, and dad. Jason will offer us vital tips, tricks, hacks, and habits that will help you and your family stay as safe as possible. Welcome to the podcast, Jason. It's such a delight to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carla. I'm really thrilled to be here.
So, before we launch into the topic of today, could you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you, you?
Well, in this particular context, I think my focus for the last 5 years on family safety coaching came from when I adopted my oldest son. And he was 7 years old at that time. It was an in-family adoption because his parents became medically incapable of caring for him. Mm-hmm. And so this wasn't try for a couple of years with your spouse and then have 9 months to get ready. And it wasn't, I'm sure many of your listeners know that kind of more traditional adopt-a-baby adoption often is a process of many years too. It was, didn't have a kid, 2 weeks later had a kid.
Oh my.
Right. And at that time I ran a martial arts school, and I'd been training in martial arts at that point for more than 20 years. I was a 4th degree black belt. I'd done some work as a bodyguard. I'd done some very stupid things in some very dangerous places and came out intact. I kind of thought I was a badass. And then I remember very, very clearly, the weekend before my son DJ was to come live with us, I was doing some weapons work with some experts, people who were teaching me things, and noticed how many of those would keep me safe, but would, for example, point the gun pretty much where a 7-year-old would be standing if I was trying to protect him. And I thought, wow, so little of what I had learned that far had taught me how to protect my child, keep my family safe. And I immediately started focusing on learning the skills on how to keep my family safe. For example, I talked to, when I say I'm a bodyguard, I was the guy that you would ask to walk with you if you bought a car for cash. right? I was I was that kind of bodyguard, but I reached out to people who do the high-end executive protection stuff and learned some physical techniques that would not point a gun at someone I was protecting, for instance, but also noticed that all of these people who, they're up there, they're protecting celebrities, people whose names you would recognize. They talked a little bit about taking away guns, but they talked a lot about making sure there was enough water if you were taking them to LA, making sure they had really good shoes on. They all had advanced medical training, and realized how many of those things would be even more useful to protecting my kids, and how many of those things I had no training in whatsoever. And I kind of made it my mission to start looking at that and finding that stuff out. And around the same time, I found out that the one consequence of running a martial arts school is that's an evenings and weekends job, because that's when people are available to take martial arts lessons, which also means you never see your kid. So I transitioned from that into a career in journalism for about 10 years. And then I had what I call my COVID seizure. I think a lot of people had a kind of change in direction during the COVID.
Yes. Yes.
And mine was to combine that skill I had learned in interviewing people as a journalist with my experience as a parent and as a martial artist. And then I started my show, Safest Family on the Block, where I found world-class experts on every manner of safety you can imagine, and just wrung them dry on camera of everything I could get them to tell us about how to keep their kids safe. And the result is my Safest Family on the Block project, and the book and all that stuff.
Okay, so your Safest Family on the Block book, listeners, that will be in the show notes along with Jason. There it is. If you're watching by video, you just got a glimpse of that tremendous book. It's really an essential for families because it offers information on a wide variety of topics that you wouldn't think you need to know until you're in the middle of it. So when we look at, so I have another question. You talked about your one child, but you have another child.
I do. Homegrown, this one, 10 years young. Yeah. And his relationship with his older brother is much more of an uncle-nephew vibe. Just because they are so far apart in age. But, they're very fond of each other. In fact, I got to take them both to a heavy metal show last night. It was the youngest's very first time. And it was very sweet to watch the older brother's very nurturing, very protective vibe of his kid brother who was coming to the show with us. So it was nice.
Nice. And so let me just ask you, in that situation, because a lot of parents find themselves in a situation like a concert, a big crowd. So I'm just going to jump into that opportunity right there. What is the one thing, if you could only know one important thing, when you take your kid into a big event? I'm thinking of a fair, a concert, anything where the big gatherings. And now I never gave mass shootings a thought when I'd go to a concert or this or whatever. And now it's on my radar. I know many of my clients, it's on their radar. What would you say if you could tell people, well, let's make it top three things. One seems too confined. What would you say?
First one, absolutely establish your rally point before you go in. Just have the conversation before you go in. Hey, if we get separated, we're going to meet by the Ferris wheel. If we get separated, we're going to meet by the front gate. If we get separated, we're going to meet at the snow cone stand. Just that way, everybody knows going in. Because otherwise, you're wandering around there, and all of a sudden, you notice your child's not there, and neither of you has any idea how to contact the other one. And so just ahead of time, set that rally point ahead.
That makes so much sense. Even if you're there just with your partner. Yeah. You don't think you'd get separated from a partner. What if one goes to the restroom or to the concession stand? You wouldn't necessarily know where to find each other. So excellent. Establish your rally point. I like that. Okay. I've never done that, but I will now. Okay. What's number two?
Number two is if you have really small children. The ones that are old enough that you're not carrying the whole time, but still so young that they don't know your phone number.
Okay.
You take their favorite digital device and you make the password your phone number, and you let them know what it is. And this is how strangers, people who are trying to help, can get a hold of mom and dad if you guys get separated, and they will know your phone number within 24 hours.
You know what? wouldn't have thought of that one. And it's interesting because for people I call regularly, they're on speed dial. I don't use their number anymore. So if you ask me, for most people, I won't know their number. Our brains used to hold a litany of numbers, and now it might be, a handful or okay. So that's a very good tip. Now, do you include the area code?
Depends on your device. Some of them won't give you that many digits.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but in that kind of situation, the security person, the officer, the friendly mom who spotted them crying in the corner will probably cycle through the most common area codes, and they'll find you soon enough. And I will tell you, my wife got so tired of me thinking her phone number was Siri, call Rachel, that she has changed the password to my phone, to her phone number.
There you go. All right. Tip number 3.
Tip number 3 is, and this is for the larger emergencies. You mentioned mass shootings, riots, something like that, or a fire in the building, for example. Head to anywhere that says employees only. Or if you're at a concert, run to the stage. If you're in a restaurant, run to the kitchen, because everybody's running for the exit, and that's going to get crowded. And you remember most of the major fires where people died, it was because there was a press at the exit and people couldn't get out. But there's always an exit door in the kitchen. No matter what building you're in, there's an exit door in the kitchen. If you've ever worked for food service, you know this. And if you're in places where building codes aren't enforced, or maybe you're in another country where the rules aren't as tight, often that emergency exit in the back, it might be locked to prevent interlopers from coming in. It might have a stack of bottled water or boxes in front of it. But the door in the kitchen is the one the employees used, so it's kept clear and convenient. And so, yeah, if things go really, really bad, run into the employees' areas and then find the kitchen and get the heck out of there. The path will be smoother and clearer and better maintained.
Excellent. And I'm thinking, as you're saying, my brain was going, well, why would I go toward the employees? But you're right. There's going to be a place for ingress and egress for employees back there. They have to have a way to get in and out of work. Excellent. And the stage, the same reason, there will be exits for the person who's performing to get in and out in an unobtrusive way. So excellent. All right, strange question, but if you have a sense, let's say it's a mass shooting, and I really hate to go there. I'm getting chills. I don't even like to think of that.
Well, this is a thing that so many parents worry about, and because unfortunately, our society is not producing answers. A lot of us worry about it, and a lot of us have no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, where do we go if there's a shooter?
If there's a shooter, really the same thing. If you were for example, there's different kinds of shootings, different situations. But if we're talking about we're in a large mass area like that jerk and I would use stronger language if we weren't on a family-friendly show in Las Vegas a few years ago. The answer is still the same: run towards the employee area, get out of there, just run in a straight line. If you are in areas where there are where like a school or an office where sight lines are more obscured, where there's a corner to run around. The advice, that run, hide, fight is advice that's given out a lot, which is, run if you can run, hide if you can't run, fight if you have to. I'm not a huge fan of that. It was developed for a very different environment in the military where it's appropriate and sensible, but doesn't really apply for a lot of reasons. The best advice is kind of take that framework but change it a little bit, where escape, not run, because running doesn't tell you where to run. It also doesn't include walking, ducking, holding very still, crawling through windows. You just escape, move towards safety, move away from the danger. And then instead of hide, because that calls, having kids tuck under the desk and hope for the best, or go hide in a closet and wait. Instead of hide, deny. Do everything you can to deny the bad guy access to you. Lock doors, get around a corner. If you're somewhere, like you're at school and you have access to the janitor closet, throw a couple of those gallon jugs of soap on the floor. Wile E. Coyote tricks. Anything you can. Get in a room, lock the door, put a line of desks between the door and the opposite wall if it opens inward, so physics means no one's getting in. Turn off lights, turn on noise. anything you can do, not to hide because that's so passive, but to actively deny the bad guy access to you and your people. And then the last one, instead of fight, you don't say fight because fight, that conjures images of UFC or boxing matches or
Yes.
playgrounds, right? You don't fight, you attack. You attack in mass groups with weapons by surprise.
Okay. This is a lot. It's interesting how I'm such a pacifist. I'm such a peace-loving individual that it's making my energy go, oh, this sounds
Yeah.
awful. So listeners, if that's happening to you, deep breath in, deep breath out, because for most of us, fight, flight, freeze, right? Appease, fawn. I know for me, I would probably freeze. And so if we've talked about fleeing, we've talked about the fight or that piece. What would you say if somebody finds themselves frozen?
So freezing is really interesting. And this addresses the question from your listener that came in too. I think she's finding herself frozen at the very thought of it.
Mm.
There's a saying in the tactical community, and I'm not a real fan of all those people who go out and cosplay Navy SEALs on the weekend and buy all this tactical gear, but they do have some good sense. And one of them is people do not rise to the occasion. People fall to their level of training.
Mm.
You will act the way that you are in the habit of acting under stress. That's why when you're in an argument with your spouse, you keep saying the same stupid thing, conversation after conversation after conversation, even though you know better, right? We've all had that experience. We've all had that where when we know better as the words are coming out of our mouth that we know what's going to happen next. We all do this, right?
I'm laughing. I'm laughing. Yes. It is such a common, we have our brains are wired a certain way. And until we wake up and have that epiphany and really work on doing it differently, we will do it in the habitual way. And then we have to keep working to find a different pathway.
Exactly. And that metaphor applies to physical stressors as well. Under stress, we will do what we're used to doing. And finding opportunities to, if it's a specific thing that scares you, to go court that specific thing, maybe, at much lower stress levels originally. Like if public speaking scares you, don't go book yourself a night at the Met. Give a speech, ask to give the welcome speech at your next church meeting or PTA meeting, or just give a toast at your family dinner table, if that's a reach for you, but do a little more than you're used to, and then build on that and build on that and build on that until you're ready to go take an improv class and do improv comedy in front of 500 people.
Baby steps. Yes.
But baby steps every day lead to shocking conclusions. And so if you are afraid that you will freeze, if you found you have frozen, find ways to address that adrenal situation and not freeze, and just keep scaling it back until you don't freeze. And then perform there, make a habit there, and then go a little bit further, make a habit there, because we will fall to our habits under stress.
Thank you for highlighting that. And I wholeheartedly agree that if you're prone to fighting, you're going to fight. If you're prone to fleeing, you may flee. If you're prone to freezing because you get overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, rehearse this is what I'm hearing you say, Jason, rehearse a different way of doing it. So for this individual who's saying, I don't know what to do, there are fires, there are earthquakes. For someone who lives in another area, maybe there are tornadoes, maybe there are floods, maybe you've never had one, but you want to be prepared for something. Would you recommend then, this individual brings up a go bag, which for those of us who have experienced fires and natural disasters, we know that is the bag that has our essentials in it. It has an extra pair of shoes, a pair of sweats, essential medication, maybe some bottled water, anything that we need, a copy of our passport, copy of our driver's license, these important things. For many people, it includes an extra cell phone charger, those kind of things. So what would you say, particularly for this individual who's saying, I've got 3 kids, I know my partner will help if he's around, but it sounds like maybe I don't know if they're gone a lot or what the situation is. How would you help this individual not freeze, get into the habit of having a go bag always at the ready. So it's out of, it's not something she needs to accumulate or they need to accumulate. It's already done. It's packed. It's ready to go. Maybe one for her and each of the kids, and maybe
Yeah.
one for the husband, like a duplicate of these necessary items. How would you encourage her to get prepared?
Well, I'm seeing two challenges from what we read, and one
Okay.
of them is the what do you put in the bag? Where do you put the bag? And that's advice that you can get. There's some pretty easy specifics about that. The other challenge is it sounds like the very idea of that emergency frightens her so much that when she thinks I should put together a go bag, it's so scary and yucky that she can't bring herself to do that, and that's not uncommon. A lot of us don't like to think about harmful, scary things because it's scary, and being scared is no fun. So to achieve that part, I'm gonna take some advice a friend of mine gave me from his therapist because he's going through some stuff and wanted to get back in the gym, but was so depressed that he just wasn't having it. And his therapist said, okay, here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to promise me you will drive to the gym. Gym was between his work and his house. So I want you to pull into the parking lot of the gym. And if you can't get out of the car and get into the gym, you've still gone to the gym. You've gotten one step further than you did before. And so if I would encourage your listener to, when she next thinks, oh, God, I got to get these go bags together, just do one little thing. Maybe it's just sit down on the website and pull up a list. Find a website that shares a go bag checklist that works for your family. And that's it. That's all you got to do. That's all the interaction with the scary thing you got to do that day. And then the next time you're thinking about it, print the list. And maybe at that point, that's all you can do that day. Or maybe it's been a really good day, feeling a little more resourceful, and you can print the list and then just kind of check off the stuff you already have. And then the next time you can get on Amazon. Just a little, just do a little of it. And again, eventually it'll become a habit. And one of the things is that one of the best antidotes to fear and anxiety is having a plan. And so the more she interacts with that plan, the less anxious she's going to be about it.
Absolutely. And I've also found, Jason, that partnering with someone, whether she can partner with her actual romantic partner, depending upon the ages of her kids, she might partner with them and one at a time say, let's make a game of this. Here's a list. How many things can we put in this today? And so when we add a little bit of lightheartedness to it, gamify it just a bit.
Absolutely, especially with kids. And the neuroscience that's been coming out the last 10 years about how much more quickly we learn things and how more we retain it if we do it in the context of play is just it's unbelievable and irrefutable. You learn stuff better. I mean, just think about, because it is play, think about how many things that you learned in high school you still remember versus how many lyrics you remember.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's that when we are hard on ourselves or someone's being hard on us, it can put us into that fear response. And when we are in fear, we are not able to learn or absorb information. We may absorb stress, we may absorb, some negative internal voices, but we are not in that place of being receptive and open. So yes, I'm a fan. Okay, play with it as much as possible.
Absolutely. And there's so much play you can do around these things.
Mm-hmm.
And the other suggestion I'd have for, we've got what I call an underbed bag. That's the one with your second oldest pair of shoes, bottle of water, granola bar, your medications, photocopies of your ID, maybe a hoodie. If you wear glasses, spare pair of eyeglasses. That's the thing you grab when the fire alarm goes off, right? It's just 48 hours worth of goods. Then there's that other bag that's sometimes called a boogie bag, sometimes called a get home bag, sometimes called a bug out bag. And all the tactical people want to, they're going to put on their face paint and tell you to go get a tactical black duffel bag and put all this stuff with brand names like Stealth Angel in it. But what's in that bag? It's some shelter, some warmth, a way to make a fire, a way to cook some food, a source of light, and a first aid kit. That's your camping gear. Take your camping gear out of the closet and put it in the trunk of your car, and now you've got a go bag.
I never thought of, that's such a good point, to think of it like a camping bag, because we often think, oh, I'm going to flee and we've been through 3 fires, at least 3 big fires here in Sonoma County, and hotels were impossible to get. I mean, they were impossible. We eventually got one in each case, but you do want to be able to be under the stars somewhere, or maybe, in a campground, who knows where but you're right. I never thought of the camping angle. That is so important. And the warmth.
Yeah.
We sometimes think, I know, if it's a fire, you think what's going to happen in that in the hot summertime. But hey, it could happen as the weather turns crisp and really cold. So yes. Oh, thank you. These are such good tips. I also thought when you were talking about how important it is to have this plan and how we learn better when we're not under stress, to create, maybe sit down with the family and make a plan, maybe have, a map of the local environment and possible places to go that might
Absolutely.
be accessible.
A paper map, because your signal's not guaranteed. But carry on. Sorry, that's a
No, that's great. I didn't even, I was here. I was thinking, Google Maps, but you're right. Print out a paper map, do it on that. And speaking of paper documents, I was talking to a dear friend the other day who actually has some of the same issues as this listener's question. And I was saying, she was saying, oh, I get so overwhelmed when it's time to photocopy all of the bank statements and driver's license and this and that. And I said, take pictures. Take pictures, put them in a file folder, in your photo album of necessary documents. And there you can have a copy of your birth certificate, a copy of all those things that if they burn or if they get water damage because there's a flood or a hurricane, who knows, that at least you have copies of them on your phone.
You can also just email those photos to your spouse or your dad or your brother. And if you're on any of the major email clients, that's there forever, and you can access them from anywhere as long as you remember your password.
There you go. And so excellent. Now, this individual was also talking about possible home invasion. You're the security guy. You're the safest dad on the block guy. How to keep her home safe from an intruder, or as safe as possible?
So I've got 2 answers for that. And the first one is my family. And remember, I'm kind of a badass. My family's home invasion plan is the same as our fire plan. Everybody gets the hell out and goes to the neighbor's house.
Okay.
There's nothing in my house worth risking my kid's life or my life. There's nothing in my house worth having my kids see me kill somebody. There's nothing in my house other than the humans that I can't replace. My home invasion plan is my fire plan.
Thank you. And listeners, if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're just seeing the audio or hearing the audio, you'll look at Jason and you will agree he does look like a bad ASS. So you do. You look like a Navy SEAL kind of gone rogue. So even you, somebody who is pretty tough guy, you would flee.
I would. There's no point. Even with my credentials and my experience, if a bad guy's coming to the front door and I engage with them, there is a non-zero chance that I will not survive that encounter. If I leave, there's 100% chance that I'm hugging my kids the next day. That's not a decision. Our plan is the exact same thing as our fire plan. Now, your listener who wrote in, I don't know about her kid's situation. I don't know if they can all get out. Are they all old enough to perform the fire plan on their own? Is there a toddler or an infant in the equation? That means that you can't just light out the window and meet them at the mailbox across the street. So there are some realities, but even then, when my youngest one was an infant, our fire plan included me crossing the hallway and getting him and leaving the building. And so that's the first part of it, that someone kicks in your door, go out the back door. That said, there are ways to make it less likely for someone to kick in your door. And the presence of good lights and good cameras, which are all now really inexpensive on Amazon and really easy to install because they're all on Wi-Fi. Cutting down or trimming back, not cutting down or removing bushes in your yard so things are clearly visible from your windows and from the street. If you buy, high ticket items that you buy, like a new TV or something like that, take that cardboard to work and recycle it there instead of having, hey, brand new $3,000 item in this home, all you neighbors right there in your trash. Pay attention to your social media, making sure that you're not showing off wealth, things like that. Get to know the neighbors so they look out for you. These are all things, and I could go off for an hour or two, and I can recommend a fellow named John Riddle, who's a former SWAT officer and robbery investigator who has a very good channel. I think it's called Condition 1, where he goes over that in some detail. He's been on my show 3 different times. He's a real knowledgeable guy who can go into much more detail about that. But take steps to make your house look harder to get into and worth less trouble, and have a plan to just, someone comes in the door you don't want, you just go out the back door.
Okay. And just taking this just to a slightly different level, you can't get out the door for some reason. You and your family, your fire plan has you going through the windows, meeting in the mailbox across the street.
Absolutely. And that gets to fire safety, which is another of my pet peeves. One thing I do, I'm not here to talk politics about guns. Everybody has an opinion about guns, and they have the right to, as much right to theirs as I have to mine. But if I am talking to somebody who's talking very lovingly about their gun and has a name for it and talking about that, I ask them what model their fire extinguisher is. And if they don't know, then they're not really talking about protecting their family. They're talking about how much they like guns. And I like guns too, don't get me wrong, but let's be honest about why we're doing different things. But making sure you have a fire ladder in every second floor bedroom, because otherwise, if you have to go out the window for fire or for home invasion, how are you going to go out the window? So get on Amazon, spend $20 on each of those fire ladders and have those in place.
Excellent. Now, another question, and this for people in California or other fire-prone areas, there is a certain contingent, I don't know about this individual, but there's a certain contingent of people who want to stay and fight their fires. They have all of the stuff, the little fire hoses and this and that. What is your opinion on people who want to stay? Let's imagine that this listener's husband says, oh, you guys go ahead and go. I'll stay and fight the fire. I'm going to hunker down. I have the best equipment to do so. What do you say about that? I see it in your face.
I have a real rule for myself about I don't judge people about something unless I've been in that situation and not screwed it up, if you know what I mean. So I've not been in that situation. However, I've very rarely seen it work out well when amateurs go in to do the professional's job. And wildfires are much bigger, much meaner, and much older than us. I would recommend against it, but if it's important to you, that's your decision. But there's, you play certain games, you're going to get certain prizes, I fear, most of the time. And again, like I said about the home invasion, what exactly is in your home that is worth not hugging your child the next day?
Absolutely. So I appreciate your very thoughtful, gentle response. And I also appreciate how you explain that fires are much bigger and something else and older than we are. And
bigger, meaner, and olderness.
Bigger, meaner, and older. Okay, they are. So I would be on the team that is definitely headed out. And okay.
Now, I'm an Oregon boy, and we use that verbiage about the ocean.
Bigger, meaner, and older.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't mess with that ocean either.
No.
And I think we could talk about so many aspects. I know there's been a spate of drownings in some of our local rivers and beaches, and people not realizing the importance of some of those basic safety things. I know we're going a bit off script here, but life vests. Life vests. Nobody's too cool to wear a life vest.
No, don't get me started on life vests. And here's the thing about life vests. First of all, I have a great interview with a young man he's a new dad, and he was a lifeguard for a long time, and he has opinions about life vests. And just little silly promotion. Go watch Jewel's interview on my show if you want to know all about life vests. But The way that I think about life vests, and I remind myself when I'm tempted to just go out without a life vest, because I'm a strong swimmer. My mother was terrified of me drowning. That was just a phobia of hers. So I was swimming very well when I was young, and my family has a little property near a lake, and I've kept myself in shape to run at least to be able to at any time swim half the breadth of that lake, meaning that no matter where the boat fell out, I could get to shore. But then, well, what if I dislocate my shoulder when the boat tips? What if I bang my head? And then all my swimming, you could be an Olympic swimmer and not get to shore. So, just wear the life vest. And besides, they got cool life vests. They're brightly colored. They got cool little technological gadgets on it.
And they don't need to be all big and bulky. You can
Oh,
find ones that will keep you afloat that are nice and lightweight. And okay, so we covered that life vest piece. Now, are there any other, just going more general, you have so many tips in your book. I mean, we can say it's common sense stuff, and I think I'm kind of a common sense person, but you've already told me so many things that wouldn't necessarily, have been in my brain. So any other big pieces that you think our listeners ought to know,
so there's
other than getting your book?
Yeah, absolutely. Please get the book. It's a good book, if I say so myself. I'll do a small one and a big one. And these are both. The book came from me interviewing over 100 experts about family safety. And a lot of the time when we say family safety, people think crime prevention. And that is a part of the book. It's divided into 10 chapters on different topics, and crime prevention is one of those topics because it's important. But I do talk to a Navy SEAL about self-defense and a police officer about home defense. But I talked to a suicide counselor about the signs to watch for in your teens. And I talked to a nutritionist, and I talked to a firefighter, and I talked to that kid who was a lifeguard. All of these different topics are important. And some of them are topics that you're already expert in because of jobs you had, experiences you've earned, interests that you've engaged in. But every single one of those people who came on the show, they would say just something that had never occurred to me. But once it occurs to you, kind of like what you've been having today, it's like, oh, man, I really should have thought of that. Of course that's right. And of course that's better than I'm doing. Right? And so the small one of that was from a guy who was a real bodyguard. Like his thing was being the guy in charge of security for touring rock bands in the 80s and 90s. He says the next time you buy a pair of shoes, you put them on your feet and you take your old pair of shoes and you put them in the trunk of your car. You do that for every family member. That way, if you're wearing stilettos on date night, when the car breaks down, you can change into good walkable shoes. Or if you're on the way back from the beach in flip-flops and it's 3 miles to the gas station. And it's such a simple, easy little thing.
Absolutely. Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is a really good one. You're headed back from a manicure. You have on those little flip-floppies that aren't even flip-flops. They're so thin. Yeah. I mean, or a pedicure it would be. Whatever it is, you're right. There are so many times where you would really be wishing for that pair of comfortable, if slightly worn, tennis shoes.
Yeah, and I would even trade slightly worn for well broken in and super comfy.
Yes.
Right? And that comes from Nick Hughes, author of How to Be Your Own Bodyguard. And he's a really smart guy. And that was just one of those, how did I never think of that things? Now, the other one's more complex, and this is more of an amalgam of things that I've heard from a lot of folks, which is that when it comes to family safety, your absolute best line of defense is how honestly your kids communicate with you. That early on, when they're young, they might hide from you that they're being bullied because they don't want to worry you. They might hide some inappropriate advances from a coach or a teacher because they've been told to keep the secret. As they get older and they need advice about interacting with the temptations of drugs and sex, they might hide that from you. And as adults, maybe one of them is in a relationship with somebody who's abusing them. And they're getting beaten, but they're embarrassed or afraid to come to you. And there's almost everything boils down to clear, open, loving communication and your child's ability to trust you to talk to them lovingly about difficult topics. I think a lot of us, you seem to be about my age, a lot of us, because they thought that was the right way to parent. A lot of our parents, if we were having a bad day, when we come home, they felt it was their duty to make our day worse by hollering at us and grounding us and adding additional arbitrary punishments on top of how the world just kicked us right in the face.
Yes.
And the people who know parenting now know better than that. And
Mhm.
actually, I talk about how my kids are 10 years apart. I learned all of this stuff after my oldest kid was grown and my youngest kid was in grade school. So my oldest and I, we luckily have a very good relationship, despite the fact that it was much more of that old school parenting style with him. And we do call him the rough draft. He and I both. We can joke about it. But he will call me out sometimes when I'm very different with the younger kid. But that idea that when our kid's having a rough day, it's our job as parents to make it worse is the first thing to defeat, I think, if we want to have that open, clear, two-way communication with our kids for the things that matter as they get older.
Absolutely. And in my practice, I work with young adults, parents, older adults. I find that exactly what you were talking about. Healthy communication, not getting stuck in right, wrong, good, bad, which I can see you're very good at doing. You have your opinions, but you keep a very non-judgmental space, and how critical that is in all of our relationships to be able to listen rather than always having to be heard, but be able to listen, to be curious, to ask a kiddo, you seem like you're maybe a little sad today. What's going on? And listen. You don't need to fix unless they're asking to be fixed, anything like that. And one of my favorite tools in that regard is if you're talking to someone and you know something's going on as you're listening or opening up that quiet space, you can ask, what do you need? Do you need heard, helped, or hugged? And when you ask something like that, then the person who you're saying it to can go, oh, what do I need? Maybe I need all three of those. Maybe I just want to be heard and don't want any help. And and listeners, if you're a parent, a friend, a lover, whatever you are, using these tools, it's never too late to change. Sure, you may have been raised one way and modeled certain unhealthy behaviors for your kids that were modeled for you, but you can also change. I mean, you can change them. And that's the beauty of the conversation that we're having today is this is about creating healthy change that prepares you for big challenges, little challenges. And I am so surprised, blissfully so, that you brought up the piece. It was unexpected. I take it for granted. But of course, we don't want to take it for granted. Healthy communication in every situation, whether it's a family party or an escape from a flood or a fire or a tornado. It's the communication, staying gentle. And I do have to say, one thing I've really found as a human being and a professional, often when we're scared, we're screaming at people, we're yelling at people. When we do that, it's one thing to have an elevated voice so people can hear you across sirens or something like that, but keep your tone gentle. Don't get panicked or mean or angry. You'll scare the living daylights out of people and make them more prone to freeze, fight, flee, something.
Absolutely. And it's even more powerful, if your kid's a little squirrely or they're mad or they're scared, if you start talking a little quieter like this, so they have to actually hold still to hear what you're having to say, they will listen to you more carefully than they were when you were talking more loudly. It's a weird little brain hack, and it works 90% of the time. It's eerie. It's a Jedi mind trick.
It's a perfect mind trick because it's for the good. We don't want to scare other people. We want other people to listen to us. And if we're acting big and scary, we will generally get a result unless we want to scare people. And some people get off on that, but I'm not a fan. So
not so much.
Not so much. Jason, you are fabulous and such a wealth of information. Too much to go into in one podcast, but everything that you've talked about, from the first aid kit to because we often forget, first aid kit, just that little box with Band-Aids and salve and wrap and maybe a heat blanket, all of those things. So you have walked us through so many scenarios, but your book offers so much more. So please tell our listeners where they can find you.
Sure thing. So I'm Jason Brick. You can find the website is safestfamilyontheblock.org. I'm very active on Facebook. There's 7 or 8 Jason Bricks on there. I'm the only one who routinely talks about family safety, heavy metal music, and tabletop role-playing games on the same day. So you'll be able to track me down. The book's available on all the book places. It's through YMAA Publishing, so you can go to their website or to Amazon.com or to BarnesandNoble.com. Although I really, if you don't have an opinion, bookshop.org. I don't know. Have you heard of bookshop.org?
I have.
Fabulous site. The process of ordering your book is just like ordering from Amazon. It takes a little longer to get there, and you pay a couple cents extra. But when you set up your account, you identify a bookstore that you want to support. And when you buy a book from bookshop.org, that bookstore gets paid as though you had walked in the front door and bought it there. And I love them.
Brilliant. Listeners, that link also will be in the show notes, as with all of Jason's other links, so that you can readily find him, so you can order a copy of his book. Well, also, and as great as your book is, I mean, it's fabulous, but it can be worth waiting a few extra days in order to support a local bookstore. So whether you buy now on Amazon or buy and pause and breathe while you're waiting for yours to arrive through a bookstore, it's a win-win.
I mean, there's enough stuff from our conversation here to fill those days if you're really excited to get going. There was a point I wanted to just kind of circle back to about talking to our kids that came to me very recently. Because, there's a lot of tips in my book. I have a lot of knowledge, but I'm not a smart guy. I'm a guy who listens to smart people and remembers what they told me. But
I must say that's pretty Spartan of itself. So, yes.
Well, how people can't tell the difference between those two things works to my benefit. But this is from a recent interview about, children do not have a fully developed frontal lobe. They do not have forward thinking, skills. They don't have cause and effect pretty well, and they don't have the emotional regulation. My brother refers to it as kids are just small drunk adults. That actually helps me because I know how I treat a drunk adult friend, and I try to treat my kids when they're having trouble. But here's the interesting thing, that undeveloped frontal lobe that apparently doesn't come online until your 20s. When we're upset, when we're angry, when our kid just scared the bejesus of us by coming home 2 hours late without calling, guess what happens to our frontal lobe?
It's not working very well because we're coming from our place of fear.
Exactly. So we have just become a small drunk adult too, or a regular sized drunk adult. And acknowledging that about ourselves and giving ourselves permission to say to our kid, you know what? I am truthful emotion here. What you just said really hurt my feelings. I need a minute. You coming home so late scared me so bad. Man, I'm not sure how I can answer that question. I'm confused and a little nervous about this. And not only does that stop you from getting into that shouting match, but it also models for your kid that it's okay to take 5, it's okay to apologize, and it's okay to say, hey, I don't know, but by this time next week, we're both going to know. How about that? And that's just remembering that, our frontal lobes aren't, they're vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I say this often on the podcast, that our brains, especially, till you're 25, your brain the wiring is not in place. You do not have full wired access to your brain until you're 25. And we want to remember that. And as you're saying, also with the prefrontal cortex, it is not fully developed. It's coming online as you get older. And yes, by the time you're in your ideally early 20s, it's fully formed. But we want to remember that if we are stressed, if we are angry, hungry, lonely, tired, all of those things, the old HALTS acronym, we can become very childlike. So taking those time outs, breathing. If you're in the middle of an emergency, remember your breath brings on your parasympathetic nervous system. It allows you to calm yourself so that you can think a little more rationally. But you, Jason, you have offered us so much information. Thank you. And where can our listeners find you?
Facebook, on safestfamilyontheblock.org. Okay. Anybody has questions, I love nerding out about this. My email is brickjason@gmail.com. So if you got a question that you'd like to ask privately, please feel free to reach out, and I'll help the best I can.
Excellent. And listeners, again, all the links will be in the show notes. Jason, thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with us today. I'm truly, truly grateful. Thank you.
It was a real privilege. Thank you so much for having me on.
Excellent. And to our listeners, thank you for sharing your time, your energy, your just way of being with us today. It is such a joy, such a privilege. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And, as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.